Welcome, everyone. So exciting to see folks joining us from all over the country and beyond. It looks like we have a good crowd tonight, so I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. My name is Julia. I'm the Deputy Director here at Free Minds. I'm joined tonight by my co-host Carlos, our co-founder Kelli Taylor, and our amazing poet ambassadors tonight, Gordon and Kelli, aka Shaka. If you hear us using those names interchangeably, it's just what we're used to. So if you can go ahead and write in the chat if you haven't already where you are joining us from, and be sure to click everyone when you're posting your comment instead of hosts and panelists so that everyone can see the conversation. And our members will be so excited to hear from folks coming from all over the world to hear what they have to say, to read their poetry. It's really meaningful. And we're so grateful to all of you for being here with us tonight. So I want to give you a quick overview of how it's going to go tonight. So we're going to just have a conversation with our wonderful speakers tonight. And if you have any questions throughout the evening, feel free to post those in the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we'll do our best to get to those questions depending on time. And then after we wrap up that part of the evening, we're going to do a quick demo on how to use the whiteboard Miro, the online whiteboard that we use to give poetry feedback. And then we'll have just about an hour, hopefully, for folks to read as many poems as they'd like and write as many comments, which after the end of Write Night, we're going to print those all out and mail them back to our poets who are incarcerated in federal prisons all over the country. So it's really meaningful for them to get that poetry feedback in the mail, and we really couldn't do this without you. So we have over 150 people signed up tonight, which is amazing. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. Tonight is also a very special Write Night. We would like to dedicate this Write Night to the memory of Glen McGinnis, who we call the original Free Minds member. To tell you a little bit about him and his legacy, I'd like to introduce our co-founder, Kelli Taylor.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. And again, thanks so much to all of you for giving of yourself and your time and being with us here tonight. I am so excited to watch that scrolling chat with everybody from my friend Renee out in Santa Clara, California, to Free Minds member Rodion in Mexico. It's just awesome to see. So many of you may already know the origins of Free Minds, but for those of you who don't, I want to tell you the story. Melissa, can you put up our photograph? This is a picture of Glen McGinnis. He was the original Free Mind. This photo was taken on Glen's 21st birthday. He was on death row in Texas for a crime he committed when he was 17 years old. I received a letter from Glen completely out of the blue. At the time, Tara Liebert, now Free Minds executive director, and I were good friends. We were both working as television producers for foreign outlets. Now, I found out much later that Glen had gotten my name and book address through a pen pal who sent him the names of several journalists. But at the time, I had absolutely no idea why I was receiving this letter. I ended up working with an Australian team that made a short documentary about Glen, about the death penalty and about the United States commitment to it, along with the racially biased discriminatory way that it was and continues to be applied. But it's actually what happened after that, after the documentary had aired, that I could never have expected. Glen and I became friends. We continued to write back and forth to each other for nearly 4 years. We wrote to each other about absolutely everything. We wrote about the news, we wrote about the TV shows we liked, and we just wrote to each other about our lives. And I learned about Glen's incredibly traumatic and painful childhood. He was the only child to a father who had left and to a mother who was in the throes of addiction to crack cocaine. One of his mother's boyfriends raped Glen when he was 9 years old. At the age of 11, he ran away. He lived in abandoned cars, abandoned buildings, basically under the wing of adults who were complete strangers to him. So needless to say, I know tonight we're going to be talking a lot about education. And after that, there was no more school for Glen. He actually taught himself to read and write as a teenager in prison. And by the time I met him, he already loved books. Something that he wrote to me in one of his letters, which is still one of my all-time favorite quotes I want to share with you. He said, "I'm consuming good books like a hungry man do food." So I began sending him books from Amazon. We'd read the books together and discuss them in our letters. And what you have to understand is that on paper, we were two people with completely different life experiences. But we discovered that books erased so much of that distance and the differences between us. And instead, books highlighted every place where our experience as human beings with human emotions overlapped. Glen was, during the course of those 4 years, he was in his early to mid 20s. And I felt like I was being allowed to watch him grow in real time, seeing him see himself, who he was meant to be. He also wrote poetry. You can see me up in the little square. That's one of his letters. At the top of pretty much every letter he sent to me, he would write an original poem. He wrote to me a lot about how much he mourned the education that he never received and those lost years in school. A quote from one letter, he said, quote, "It's sad to think what I could have been if I'd been able to engage sooner in self-betterment, learning to read and write. I could have been a beautiful contribution to the lives of so many." So Glen actually had the idea to connect people through what he called a book club and poet society. The idea was that it would include people in prison, in the community, and maybe even people on death row. We had just started to brainstorm this idea when Glen's final appeal was denied, which meant that the next step was an execution date. And the date the state of Texas gave him was January 25th, 2000, 23 years ago today. Free Minds exists because of Glen. We launched the program, Tara and I launched the program in 2002 in hopes of fulfilling his vision and preventing future violence and incarceration. He taught us the power of sharing books and creative writing to build community, inspire individuals, and change lives. So once again, I just really want to thank you all for being here today, for participating, and please just know that what you're doing tonight, even just in an hour, will make a huge difference in someone else's life. So thank you all for carrying on Glen's legacy. And now I'm going to pass it to Carlos, who will introduce two additional phenomenal human beings who also happen to be Free Minds members.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We definitely feel Glen's present with us tonight. Now, I would like to introduce to you two great men. First, Kelli Long Shaka, one of my good friends. He is a Free Minds Poet Ambassador who joined the book club at DC Jail in 2017. During his 26 years of incarceration, he became an author, speaker, and criminal justice reform advocate. Since returning home in July of 2022, Shaka has served as Justice Reform Fellow at FAM. He is currently a program associate at the Georgetown Prison and Justice Initiative. At PJI, he supports program administration, returning citizens, and prison scholars at DC Jail. He is part of an upcoming documentary about DC Second Look legislation and is an agent for change in his work with at-risk youth in underserved communities in the district. We also have Gordon Davis, who is also a poet ambassador with Free Minds Book Club and Writing Workshop. He uses his poetry and personal story to bring change to the criminal legal system. At the age of 16, after growing up in a foster care system, Gordon was sentenced to life in prison in New York State. In his 25 years of incarceration, Gordon graduated from Barb College and received a master's degree from New York Theology Seminary. He joined Free Minds in 2018 while incarcerated. Gordon was released on parole in 2020. He is a passionate advocate for education and has also helped to develop a financial education course in New York State prisons. Gordon recently received a proclamation from the city of Albany, New York, for social justice work with people inside and outside of prison system. This is definitely like a great pleasure to be with you, man, today. Let's start with you, Shaka. Um, we known each other for a long time. One of the things that always stick out to me is like the last place where we was at in Lewisburg, and I used to walk into the kitchen. That's where we worked at, and you would have like this whole table like with all your papers, all your books. And to me, it was like I've always respected that about you. And as a matter of fact, it was contagious. Can you tell us how you got to that point?
Real briefly, it was during the stint of my incarceration where I was in solitary confinement for 27 months, and in that experience, you know, I experienced a chain of events where I seen someone in short terms like he lose his mind, and just to see that a system is set up and designed and perpetuated by not only the staff members who can not see the suffering and the hurt of another human being, but also the incarcerated residents that become so inured to this pain, you know, we can just not sympathize and laugh at it. You know, when I seen how dehumanizing, you know, inhumane that this prison carceral environment could be, I hated it. I hated that space. So by me being in that space, and it only stands to reason, but I hate this situation, I hate this space that I'm in, you know, that I have to remove the person that I was that caused me to enter that place in the first place, to enter prison. I had to kill that person that caused me into prison. So that moment I vowed that, you know, I'm not going to be the same person that caused me into prison. And I use education as my platform for transformation. You know, and just so happened fortuitously, the book cart, a guy that day, next day already pushed the book cart, and I grabbed these two books, you know, and those books were Dr. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning and Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, you know. And real briefly, like I say, but it was in the preface of Dr. Viktor Frankl's book, and they're talking about happiness, you know, and the quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said that people waste their lives in pursuit of happiness and success, when happiness and success is not meant to be pursued, but it's something that ensues when you give yourself to a cause that's greater than yourself, you know. So it was at that moment that I vowed that, you know what, I'm gonna try to be the best at bringing out the best in others, and the only way I can facilitate that goal is to educate myself. So going to the law library, and like I spoke briefly about it, I use education. I'm glad that I had, you know, my spiritual journey gave me the insight that, you know, that I use education as a resistance to the prison culture, you know. So those books were my weapon, you know, in this war against not acclimating to my environment. And that's why, like, you know, when I came to Lee County and I met you, you know, in 2005, you know, you and Joel and Mike Woody and Jabir, all these like-minded individuals that even though we were in penitentiaries, you know, we carried ourselves like free men, always meeting up at the law library, having classes, you know, over 1,200 residents on the compound, everybody at the gym, and, you know, it was a consistent presence that we had these classes, Abdullah, Mike Woody, everybody would be in the law library, you know, and that mentality, you know, it prepared us for our transition when because none of us knew that we would be in 2022, 23, we'll be in this moment. But we was living our life as free men. So when we did get the opportunity, it just like, look how far we're excelling. So that was just to be brief, that was my reason why I always kept them books around me. Those were my weapons against conformity.
Well said, Shaka. Let me ask you this other thing. How did Free Minds like help enhance your journey in education?
Well, you know, I met Free Minds, you know, it was kind of like, it wasn't intentional. Like I met Kelli, you know, Kelli was my, you know, the impetus of me joining the Free Minds family through a mentee that I was dealing with, ironic, at Lewisburg. And I used to see him always get these books, you know, like every like, he at least get like 3 books a month. You know, he get all these books, and I'm like, man, what's up, man? You get all these books, you don't read it. And I'm like, you know, I'm reading, going through the book, and they were good quality books. So he told me about Free Minds. So when he told me about it, and I was like, it blew me away, because like I didn't know that they had book clubs, and especially in DC for the youth offenders. So I wrote Kelly, you know, thanking her for the service that she provided. And then that, you know, unforeseen to me, you know, it that blossomed to a friendship because, you know, we like, hey, you writing back, what type of books that you like? And she started sending me books. So when I came to DC jail in 2018, that's when I first matriculated into the Ashland University. So they moved me into the GED block, the college block, and just so happened, Free Minds were always every Wednesday they had the book club. So that's when I finally had the opportunity to meet Kelly and Keela and actually participate in those reading groups. And for me, you know, that was such a gratifying experience, you know, from being with the younger incarcerated guys and seeing how Kelly and Keela work with them and through books, because you know, like a lot of those kids come from underserved communities, so they wasn't educated academically. Well, they smart kids, but they don't have the academic training. But just to see them sitting in a circle and we're all equals, and then just, you know, them realizing the value of their individual thought of how they conceptualize the thing that they read. And then not only that, when they had the opportunity to write a poem about that, you know, it was space where we, you know, they can honor their voices and we can honor them. And I was just happy to be a cheerleader for those guys. And you know, and Free Minds provided that space for it.
Thank you, Shai. Speaking of poems, you picked out a poem to share with us tonight. Poem titled "Dreaming."
Yeah, this poem that and it resonated with me by first of all, because it was written by a sister that's currently incarcerated and is struggling. The reason why I picked this poem because a lot of times our sisters, our women that are incarcerated, I know that it's like a double struggle for them, you know, and a lot of times they feel like they don't have a voice. So it does me a great honor that I can voice this sister poem that was written in the struggle. It's called Dreaming by Kelli E. And the poem is, I dream of a place where you get what you need and where community is the spice of life. I dream of a place where love has no bounds, where compassion and empathy resides. I dream of a place where you are free to be and where true belonging brings true freedom. Dreaming by Kelli.
Thank you for putting those emotions behind those words too. You also got a poem that you wrote yourself titled "The Swing." Can you share that with us, please?
You got downsize it because I can't see it. All right. And real briefly give context. I know we got a lot of time, but I have to give credit that this poem is so special to me because this was, I can't pronounce the Greek word, but this from the behest of Kelly, they had a contest where they had pictures. If I can't pronounce the word, but it's like you have to write a poem for this picture. And Keela gave birth to a brilliant young artist, and one of the paintings that Keela's daughter did, it resonated with me. I just seen it. It was a picture of a tree, you know, and it resonated with me. And I just wrote this poem, just like one setting. I just sat down, looked at this picture, and wrote it, you know. And it's called "The Swing." All right, and this poem is: there's not a shadow of a doubt within my heart that old tree still remembers me. During a time where laughter was more precious than gold, a long forgotten time when I was free. I still remember the quiver in my stomach, swinging so high that I could kiss the sun. Underneath that tree, I was invincible, chasing the wind just for fun. Yet now, as I stand here as an old man, I shed a tear for the bare branches of that old tree. My little swing can no longer support my body. Yet still, there's no place I'd rather be. The swing.
Wow, thank you, Shaka. Now we're gonna bring to you Gordon Davis. Gordon, welcome and thank you for being here tonight. Tell us, how did education change your perspective on reading and writing?
Like I go with the belief that, you know, education is not something that actually changed a perspective, but it gave me a perspective on how I read and how I write. It made me become more critical in both ways. And so the more I learned, the more critical I became, and the more I began to see. And so like I had a new education provided me with a new lens to not only see the world, but also see how I get to express myself and see who myself is. So my front stage became a person of education. So education for me, it gave me a outlook, and it gave me a different lens that helped me, that actually guide me into the person I am now. You know, prior to education, like growing up in the city, growing up in the poverty, we was always told that education wasn't for us, or education was for non-cool people. And so we never pursued education. So once I got incarcerated and I like to tell people I got tricked into being educated, because a lot of friends I had, you know, they play football, and I used to just hang out with them because I was a sports guy, I was big, play football. So they used to bring me papers like, yo, can you read this for me and tell me what you think? I'm like, "No, I don't want to read this. I'm not in school. I'm not reading these papers." So I just started reading them, and I'll give them my insight on them. And so he was like, yo, your insight is great. Thank you. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't know what y'all talking about, but here you go. And so they was like, yo, why don't you try out for college? I was like, that's not happening. I'm glad I got out of GED. You talking about college? I'm not going there. But I actually tried out for college, and it took me 3 times to get into Bard College, but each time I failed, I learned more. And so that drive, that failing college made me like want more and more and more. So once I got into college, you know, I began that education just opened my eyes to a new walk of life. Like I started to see things that was all around me that I didn't pay attention to. Like I hear a word or I read a word or I learn something that day, and all of a sudden it be on the news, people be talking about it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Every time I learn something, it's right in my face. And so, you know, education opened my eyes greatly. And then it was a blessing for me.
Would you say that education opened doors and like in your preparation for reentry?
Oh, absolutely. So education helped me it helped me with my reentry. Well, it helped me prepare myself for society, because I learned out here in society, yes, it's a different world, but my education has been guiding me, because you know I've been incarcerated since 16. I didn't know the world. I don't know what it consists of. A lot of stuff I never learned. But my education is helping me like guide the path for me and help me see things a little clearer. And it also helps me in my profession. I do a lot of social justice work. I do a lot of activist work, but it's the education that I had that allowed me to do these things, because I am so familiar now with knowledge and with different fields and different subjects. I am able to converse, and I am able to bring a light to different people based on experience and education.
And how did Free Minds help and expand this pursuit?
Oh, free minds, it did. Free minds was a wonder. It was Free mind gave me hope. Free minds gave me a family, and Free minds gave me the drive to pursue and keep things going. Because being incarcerated and educated, I was kind of in a bind, because once you learn about the system that encapsulates you, you start to see things differently. And now I was stuck in a place. My mind is free, but my body wasn't allowed to go anywhere. And I got to a place of depression, stress, you know, anxiety, and I was just alone. And I didn't really have family, so I was alone in there. So I met Free Minds through a friend. And how I met Free Minds was through one of the connection books. So I read the book, I read the poems of prisoners, their poems, and I was like, wow, I love this. There is a way for us to get our voice out, and people was actually supporting. So I wrote to Free Minds immediately. Like, I live in New York, I'm not in DC, but I would love to be a part of this club. And everybody opened their arms with love and let me in. And so Free Minds gave me a drive. It gave me hope and a sense of purpose. And now, you know, once I got home, I immediately contacted Free Minds. I'm home. What's the next step? Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
So Free Minds definitely helped me out and giving me something that I have lost. My dreams faded, my goals faded. Free Minds has placed them back and gave me a different path to success.
Yeah, definitely. And you also picked a poem to share. Title "Today Is the Day."
Yes, today is the day. And like Coley mentioned, or Shaka mentioned, you know, it brings me honor to be able to express this poem and read this poem for the brother who is no longer, that's not around, is not able to express it himself. And it's a blessing because all voices need to be heard. So this poem is titled Today is the Day by Emmanuel X. Hello, old me. I am writing this letter to announce the dismissal of old ways. I say farewell to old habits and unhealthy mindset. It's time to leave you behind and move on with my life and begin new adventures with a clear mind, a pure heart, and a clear conscience. Can you scroll up? The comments is blocking it. All right, thank you. Let's see. Okay. Oh, let me start over, please, because you gotta have it all down. Keep it up where you was at, please. Yeah, thank you. Hello, old me. I am writing this letter to announce the dismissal of old ways. I say farewell to old habits and unhealthy mindset. It is time to leave you behind and move on with life and begin new adventure. With a clear mind, a pure heart, and a clear conscience. Today is the day I decide to be better, do better, and lead by example.
You definitely put a voice to that too. You also got a poem that you wrote yourself titled The Beast.
Yes, absolutely.
Share that with us.
Yes, that was a moment. So absolutely. Thank you. All right. The beast. Free me from the beast that holds the mind of many. Free me from that terrifying roar that lies within me. Though it's in a cage, it still shows its teeth, silently waiting to attack those who cause grief. It sweats constantly and beads form around his brow. Yet it never alters, only nourishes the thought of relieving his hunger like that of a crying child. Free me from the beasts that turn men into savages. Free me from the place where every day is tragic. Laws are in place to punish and tame, but evil begets evil, so immorality remains. The walls close in and the heart begin to pound. How can one amend when the soul is broken down? Free me from the beast that tells these awful tales. Free me from the coffin that's designed as a cell. Is there no such thing as beauty in the world when all that's around the vision is hell? How can one survive with no sense of touch, taste, sight, or smell? If survival was key, then life has led me astray. I no longer sleep, I die at the end of each day. Free me from the beast that forbids me to mourn. Free me from the screams of those who have long gone. Contemplating with each year that passes by. Suicide is not the first reaction, the inside has already died. No more dreams, no more goals. Yes, there's blood in my eyes. Men don't hold secret, we secretly tell lies. Free me from the beast that drains the mind of ambition. Free me from the binary chains that we call religion. We must have killed God because the prince is winning. When you look at me, can you see my venom? There's no fangs or peeled off skin, but at times I slither. No natural selection, this evolution is richer. Free me from the beast that I have grown to love. Free me from that home that I no longer think of.
Wow. So I got two last questions for both of y'all, man, right? Both of y'all wrote poetry and that, y'all, you send it in to Free Minds and got feedback, right? What did that mean to you to receive that feedback from your poetry? Shaka, we'll start with you real quick.
I think especially with I wrote several poems for Free Minds, but I think with the swing poem, that was the first time where I had, and not for vanity's sake, but I had got an outpour of people in their responses to that poem, and it kind of validates my suffering. Like Viktor Frankl, he's talking about in order a person to get through suffering, you got to give meaning to your suffering. And those poems, man, that poem specifically, how people, when they wrote in their feedback, how they shared intimate moments about their experience, about this, it's old saying that it takes strength to show a weakness to a stranger. And a lot of those people who shared those moments, how they connect with, they shared their vulnerabilities with me, and it made me sympathetic, and it made me appreciative that I'm worthy of their presence. You
Mhm.
know, just like my words sparked something in them that
Mhm.
caused them to share a piece of them with
Mhm.
me. So I was so, those, like when people read another person, how someone give birth to this thought and put it on paper and share it with the world, and people reach out to you, especially in a carceral environment,
Yeah.
where a lot of people that, especially I can imagine how a younger person is that, a lot of us do things because we feel irrelevant in life. We
Mhm.
need attention, we need to be careful. And for someone, especially stranger, to take their time out and write, hey, man, your poem, it did this to me, it X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
I felt a connection with them, and it gave me a sense of like belonging and worthiness, despite, it freed my mind, this is no exaggeration. Like sometimes,
Yes.
like when I got, they don't call it free minds for nothing. I'm telling you, like when I used to read those like remarks, I might just sit like for no exaggeration, for like 3 or 4 hours, just keep reading, and that's the only way I could connect to the greater society. So it
Yeah.
means a lot.
Thank you, Shaka. How about you, Gordon?
I don't know if I could go after that one. Good Lord. Thank you, Shaka. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to show that I still have some of my poems with writings on them. Like, this is how important they are. I save them. And like Shaka said, he read them over line by line every day. So for me, I'll read them every time I was down, every time I was depressed. I would read it over and over to bring me back that day, bring me back that new hope. And it's so like amazing. Like Shaka said, man, that feeling of connection, that feeling of being human again was the thing that mattered the most to me. And so, like certain in prison, we have certain times we get mail. And so I know I don't get no mail. So I used to like act like I was doing things so I won't act like I didn't hear my name get called for mail because it doesn't hurt so much. Oh, I didn't even know mail got called. So we trick ourselves to believe these things. So once I started getting feedback from Free Mind, getting feedback on my poems from people, that changed the whole dynamic for me. It gave me, like I said, that sense of hope. It made me feel human again because the writing I got on my poem, the responses is not just like, hey, this was okay, this is great. It was like something that connected us because it's like, oh, this line made me think of this, or this line reminds me of this. And so people, like you said, being vulnerable was so different to me because inside prison, we are not allowed to be vulnerable because that's the formal code, or informal, if you may say. So we hold our vulnerability. So when you see strangers being vulnerable with you, opening up to you, connecting with you, who society cast away, it tells you a different meaning, man. There's still hope. There's still people out there who care. There's still love. And so those comments for me, it means the world. And I just want to say also, because Shaka kept bringing up Victor Franco. Just the spinoff from Victor Franco is a book by Tim O'Brien called Things We Carry. And so that book, helps me also identify like what free minds do. And so the things that we carry works both ways for me. The things that I carry is pain and suffering, but I also carry good memories of people who actually care. So it works parallel for me because it outcasts or outshadows the bad. So what I carry now is a heart full of hope and a heart full of love because I knew that there was society members out there who said, you are not deemed bad. You are not an outcast. You are a part of our family and you are part of our society. So I definitely was blessed.
Man, thank you for sharing that, Gordon. And then from the answer of those questions, like we could extract like a tip for our newcomers is just basically like just be authentic in your feedback and this how we connect with another human being. So now I'm gonna turn it over to Julia. Uh,
Sure. Yeah, well, it's hard to follow that. You're like, uh, you all are so powerful. The words you've been sharing tonight, so meaningful. We do have a question from the audience. This is anonymous. Right Nighter tonight asks for both of you, how can we help loved ones that are trying to obtain knowledge, but the prison doesn't offer any classes or programs? That's a really good question. I'm really interested to hear any ideas you all have for that as well.
Sonny, you want to
Yeah,
go first?
no, because I didn't understand the question, so I defer to you. Go ahead.
I think
All
they're
right.
asking, just like to, in case you didn't hear, how to help if someone's loved one is on the inside and they want to pursue education and learning, but the prison doesn't have classes or programs that are available. Like,
Mm.
what advice would you give in that situation?
Join Free Minds. No. So it depends. So I'm in New York, and so there was a time where there was no college programs while I was inside. So I was in GED for like years because I didn't want to pass because I know I would be sitting around doing nothing. At least there I could still be reading and learning stuff. So I always managed to fail a test on purpose. But I think in that situation, you have to teach yourself. Like you could send them books to learn to read because that's also a thing that started me off too. I had great counselors. Not all counselors in the correction system are good. And so my counselors like saw I was different and they started giving me books to read, and they started off with the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm like, dang, you want to give me these two books first? I'm like, good lordy. But, that actually promoted like a sense of you have some type of purpose. And if you have the drive and you want to learn and the prison is not giving it to you, you can get books to read from your family and friends, or you can start a class yourself. I don't know if they do that in the prison where this person is at, but you can start an educational class.
Agreed. I remember uh, when I was in mentor at the YME unit, and we established, following because during COVID protocols, the free minds couldn't really come back in like that. But I used to read to them the passage of Frederick Douglass' book, The Narrative of a Slave, right, where he used to steal bread from the master, the house of the master, because it was forbidden for him to be taught to read. So he used to steal bread and feed these hungry little white kids. It would trick them. Say, read the newspaper to me, and he learned that way, reading the newspaper by feeding these hungry kids. And when I read that, it shows like the determined nature of a person, especially of a man. If you really want to do something, we did. That's why a lot of us ended up in prison. It's all we knew the consequences. You sell drugs, you shoot this person, stuff. But we wanted to be in the streets with an angle. We wanted that. We wanted that reputation. We wanted that money. We wanted that recognition for going hard. We suffered the consequence behind it. So if a person wants to get educated, even in that carceral environment, like the brother said, you're gonna do it yourself. You're gonna read books. Like Malcolm X, he didn't. There's so many examples. He didn't. He was illiterate. He had drug issues. He came in there. He found a dictionary. He did it himself. And those things. And nowadays, I think it's even more because there are a lot of organizations that out there like Free Minds that's willing if someone wants to reach out. So like the onus is on the individual, you know, and But I real quick, I'm not trying to hijack the meeting, but Tara posted a question, right? And it
Yeah, I
said,
was about to
"Oh,
go
go ahead,
ahead
go ahead,
if
Julie,
that's
go
what
ahead,
you're,
go ahead,
yeah.
go ahead." I think that's a real good
First,
question.
I also want to shout out, as someone in the chat pointed out, the return of the Second Chance Pell Grants is a really, really positive step in terms of making higher education more widely available for folks on the inside. And in the
That's
long
right.
term, that's not, this isn't like an easy thing to deal with in the immediate when someone is in the inside and doesn't have access to quality programs. But in the long term, we all as a community can keep advocating for increased access to education and to
Right.
resources.
Hey, Julie, real quick,
Yeah,
excuse me, but also to the Gordon's point. I mean, like even if you have that drive, I guarantee you, just do it. Like you say, because I remember when I had life without parole at one time, and when I was in Atwater, I was in the challenge program, but I see there was a lot of like when you have those long type sentences, you don't have your access to availability to programs is slim. So I created a program myself called Turning Life Sentences into Life of Substance. You know, I got the material. I copied and pasted like little pamphlets from the psychology and put a curriculum together. You know, so man, you know, we one thing about being African American and being poor, like we are masters of making something out of nothing. You know, so we just take that same skill set and apply it to like this educational spectrum, and we can make it happen.
That's beautiful, and that's really a good thing to keep in mind for everyone. The incredible resourcefulness and ingenuity that
Oh,
folks have. Yeah,
I just want to add one more thing too before you go on. You can also write to certain colleges. You can do correspondence programs. And so there's a lot of colleges that, may offer this. If not, they can help you find some other way to give you this knowledge. But yeah, write to the colleges, ask for correspondence programs, or just write different programs and ask for any type of material that, that'll help you further your education.
absolutely. Now, I know we've gone over our planned time, but this is a really good question in the chat that I wanted to bring up. So this is from one of our members who's just home from prison and dealing with maybe his first time using Zoom. And so he asked, how are you able to share with so many people that you've been incarcerated? I'm afraid to tell people because I think others will judge me and only think of my past, and I won't get jobs and other opportunities.
Mm. That's
Profound question.
no, it is. But for me, what I have learned being out here is that you can't hide who you are or what made you. And so if people accept you or they don't accept you based on where you come from, that's on them. But like your goal is to show the world or that show people your worth, your self-worth. I always try to show people my self-worth and who I am prior to them having time to judge me. And so yes, I still do it too. I still say that y'all have been incarcerated till later. I want you to know who I am first. Before I tell you that, then you'll have a better chance at judging. And also, like in today's society, little pockets, I don't know where this person is at, but society is more prison friendly than it was back in the days. So a lot of places like businesses and companies are looking for ex-felons to fill certain positions, those, especially those who have been educated, because they feel that those people who's been educated and in prison has a greater experience, and they also have a knowledge to back that experience up. And so they look for people like us to help guide them in different fields, help them relate to others who they can't get to. So you still have a purpose and a goal. You just got to find the path or the vehicle to get you to where you need to go. So don't be discouraged by people rejecting you. I couldn't get an Uber Eats job because I had a felon. I couldn't work in Target because I had a felon. But that didn't stop me from being who I am and keep pursuing my goal. I just had to find my lane where the person where I am and the place where I've been is acceptable.
Yeah, pretty much. I had to echo the sentiments of Gordon. My whole thing is my story is my backstory. I live my truth. And like I didn't come home to be a free man. I was a free man while I was incarcerated. I was a college student while I was incarcerated. I wrote my first book and got my first book published while I was incarcerated. And I got a job working at Georgetown while I was incarcerated. So you know what I mean? So you just live your truth. You don't erase that. Real quick. Malcolm X said, "Man, there's no shame in being a criminal. It's a shame to remaining a criminal." So so when you live your life in context, you own your truth. And your circumstances and when your present day circumstances, it's a saying that things fall apart. For the things that's meant for you to fall in place. So just man, live your truth, man. And I'm guarantee you, the universe, God created, it has a way to making things fall in your lap, man. So just stay true to you. If you in it, like you said, if you give yourself in a cause to elevate yourself, elevate the next man, I'm telling you, you're gonna be wealthy. You may not have $1 million bank account, but you're gonna be wealthy of spirit, character. That's gonna get you a long way.
That's right.
I'd just like to add that there's more than 200 people now on this Zoom. So that's over 200 people here who came out wanting to wanting to hear directly from folks who have lived experience with the prison system. So I think that's proof already that there is a supportive community out here. And maybe the key is to find that. Anyway, thank you for those great questions. Thank you all for being here. I know, like I said, we've gone a little over time, so I just want to take a few minutes now to do a quick demo for how to use the platform Miro that we use for writing the comments on the poems. If you're a pro, if you're already used to, if you've been doing Write Night for a while, you know how to use Miro, you can go ahead and get started. Our team will post the link in the chat, but I'm going to pull it up on my screen here to give you all a quick visual of how it works. It works best on a computer or a tablet. So if you are using your phone, we recommend using another alternative that we've set up through a Google Doc. And all of this information is on our website, freemindsbookclub.org. And there's a link to that page in the email confirmation you got from Zoom. It's also here, so if you click on this link that we posted in the chat, this brings you to one of our 3 virtual tables that we have set up on Miro. And you can use these buttons, the plus and minus in this corner, to zoom in and make it, as big as you want. And you click on this arrow on the left to easily click and drag and move around, or you can just scroll with your mouse. And on this first page here, you'll see a few tips and tricks, and you'll also see the links to each of the other virtual tables. As I said, there are 3. They have different poems on each one. So after you've read the poems on one table, go ahead and click over to the next to make sure you don't miss some of the awesome poetry we have with us tonight. We have a phone number for our amazing team member, Neely, who will be available via phone until 8:30 Eastern Time, and this information will be in the chat as well if you're having any technical difficulties. And as I mentioned, if you're on your phone or if you're not able to access Miro for any reason, you can access the same poems in this Google Doc, and the link is right here. But when you're on Miro, you want to, again, use this mouse to just click and drag to where you want to go, and then you're looking at a poem. And when you're ready to write a comment, you just click on T here, that's T for text, and you click anywhere on or near the poem, and then you can go ahead and start typing. And we like to begin just acknowledging people by their first name. And then, like Gordon and Shaka were saying earlier, just find some way that you connect with the poem, share whatever authentic response you have in the moment when you're reading this poem. You can share favorite lines or anything that it that it makes you think or feel. You type whatever you want to type here, and you can sign it with your name. We like to do first names, and since we have folks from all over, you want to write in the comment where you're joining us from so that folks get to see that on their poems when they get these back in the mail. We know that'll be really powerful. And it saves automatically, so you just click anywhere and you're done. There's your comment. And then again, you can just scroll over to the next poem. And if it appears blurry like this, give it a minute, or sometimes it needs to just zoom in a little bit more to get into a good resolution. And that's basically how to use Miro. There's a chat box here in the lower left where you can ask any questions, and our staff will be online until 8:30 tonight to help with that. The virtual tables will be open past 8:30. So if you're not done reading, you can keep reading and keep writing comments. But our tech team has to sleep at some point. So they will be taking a break after 8:30. And now that is basically how to use Miro. The links are in the chat. I see to the Google Doc. And thank you, Anika, for posting the link to the Miro boards. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Carlos, do you have any finishing closing remarks for us?
I just want to thank everybody for coming, and definitely if you want to continue to just support us, just go to the website and donate, even if it's just $1. Definitely go ahead and click the link, and please just enjoy the poems. We definitely look forward to seeing you in the next Right Night in February. Thank you again for coming, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. So we're going to leave this Zoom open for a minute to just give everyone time to click on that link, and the URL and the phone number are also here on the screen. So thank you again so much, and enjoy the poetry. And we hope to see you next month.